So just about the air in Alice project, it is a project based in Alice Springs. It was funded by the Department of Business and Innovation. It's a 3-year project, and I will try to be as quick as I can because we are running out of time. So the overall aim of the project is to actually just collect temperature and air quality data. Then the simplest form, that's the aim of the project. But we are doing it in a different way, that we are collecting temperature and air quality with the help of sensors that are installed across Alice Springs, as well as we are including community volunteers who would become part of a citizen science network. So people will go around, get involved in the activities they are usually involved in, but they will keep wearing sensors, which will collect temperature and air quality. So we will be able to know the actual exposure community members are exposed to in terms of air quality and temperature. So you might have seen a similar slide in most of the presentations today. I think Mark used it. I saw a similar quote, "Heat the silent killer," somewhere else as well, I think, today. So you might be wondering why this slide again. The reason of why we are putting in this slide is, even as people are talking about a lot about heat and its impact on health, often it's underrepresented compared to the high impact extreme events like tropical cyclones or floods or bushfires, where the impact is like suddenly you can see so many deaths, so many houses are damaged. But this is often very slow, the impacts of heat. And that means a question I generally got asked to when I started heat health research was, okay, the weather is hot, but you can still go outside. But will you go outside if there's a tropical cyclone? Yeah. So you probably wouldn't go because you're more worried about the tropical cyclone, its intensity and how it might affect your health or, even cost your life. But if you compare it with heat, it's just a hot day. You can still survive that hot day. So there's a general trend in terms of, underestimating the impacts of heat. There was a study in Victoria among Jewish community members. And the study found that there were quite a lot of Jewish community members who actually survived the Holocaust and came to Australia. So for them, when you talk about heat, they were like, we survived the Holocaust. What is heat going to do to us? So I have a similar personal story. When I started working on heat and health, initially I was looking at tsunamis. Then I looked at southwest monsoon. All of this have, huge impacts on community. So when I went back to India, I was talking to my father, and he asked me, "What are you doing now?" And I just said, "Okay, I'm looking at heat and health." And then he looked at me and he said, "I think you should concentrate on something more useful for the community, because apparently it's not, hitting the headlines." So I was a little bit taken aback because that came from my own father, and I was a little bit unprepared to answer him. So I monitored him for the next few days. Like every time he went outside and he came back and he said, "I'm tired," or he's drinking water, or he's sleeping. And I kind of made a record of each and everything he was doing, because, this is within your household. He has a researcher, a daughter who is working on this. And if I cannot convince him on how it can impact people's life, then, that's a huge issue. So that's a personal story, but I'm sure a lot of you might have, gone through those stories. It's not something that we are worried about. It affects our sleep. It affects our productivity. So it's much more complicated than, what we think it is. So that is why I would say we need to monitor heat. We need to know what people's individual exposure should be. So I've tried to make a diagram there. As I mentioned before, people's personal exposure differ. Outdoor workers are probably more exposed to the hot weather. But that said, even interestingly, there was a study that analyzed heat-related deaths in Australia, and 50% of the deaths were within houses. So it's also a comfort. If you don't have a comfortable home where you can actually regulate the temperature, probably that might also have contributed towards people's health conditions. Access to adaptation mechanisms. We talked about the CE for Heal project before. definitely having air conditioner is one of the strategies, but if you don't have access to it, if you don't know, where to get help, if you're not aware of it, as I mentioned, there are communities where, you're supposed to wear, for cultural reasons, probably dark colored clothes, or clothes that, you have long sleeves and full clothing. Some people in India have, due to cultural reasons, they do wear those clothes, but all of this is probably not very friendly for the hot weather. So, awareness on how best to actually adapt to such weather, even if you are following your cultural practices, is also important. Elderly people are really vulnerable population. Another important factor need to consider is people with existing medical conditions, especially with cardiorespiratory conditions. Some people who take certain specific medications are more vulnerable. People who live in isolation, often when there is a heat wave and all, like sometimes you're not connected to the social supports that you need, which makes everything really complicated. And sometimes it results in quite a lot of negative health outcomes. So moving on to the next part, which is why should we monitor air quality, and why I'm saying why should we monitor air quality? Why should we monitor air quality in Alice Springs? We do not have any big industries in Alice Springs. So I would say our air quality is much, much, much better than the cities, or even compared to, highly polluted places like, for instance, from where I come from, cities in India like Delhi and all. So the question is, we do not have air quality monitoring in Alice Springs. We have now, because we have installed environmental monitoring stations. But the question is, do we need to monitor air quality? So yes, we need to monitor air quality. And I think Sotiris did touch on it. Campfires, desert dust. So these all small particulate matters that, that are invisible to the eye, that might be there in the atmosphere. We do not know unless we have looked at the data. So it is really important to monitor air quality in Alice Springs, at least for now. Maybe we might change our opinion after we have got the data set and understood maybe the quality is good. I just wanted to ask people, like, do people recognize those bottles on the right, or is it just a new thing for me on the slides? Never seen them. Okay, they are not water bottles. They are bottles of air. So apparently in 2015, there were two people who actually, just for fun, they filled in a Ziploc with fresh air, and they sold it in eBay for 60 cents. And then they put another one because that was successful, and it got sold for another like $60 or something. So they started a company named Vitality. That was from Canada. So there are a number of companies at the moment, and I've also got one from Australia, which is OC Air. It's from Outback, South Australia. So this is the importance of having healthy air, actually. Just I think living in a remote or rural place, we probably do not acknowledge, or you do not understand how much benefits we have in terms of having healthy air. And if you look at these websites, especially Vitality, the amount of benefits they link to having one bottle of air. Again, any guesses on how much it costs? Oh no, it's cheaper than that. It's $23, but if you go for a 48 pack or something, you get a discount. So that's an interesting thing. And another interesting thing happened when I was trying to search for these bottles. So you know how Google actually tries to listen to you, even you think about it, and it starts giving you advertisements. So I got an advertisement, an interesting advertisement, which said, if you cannot take your loved one on holidays, give her a bottle of Canadian fresh air. And I am really worried because my husband and I actually share the same account. So most probably I will get a gift for our wedding anniversary. That will be one of these. Okay, so this is why we need to monitor air quality. So if we have good air quality, Lisa and I might start a business. So you might hear Outback NT Air soon. So moving.
About the sustainability of the bottle.
Yeah, no, we'll find a way, Lisa. We'll sort that out. So we have two sensors already installed in Alice Springs, and we aim to install three more. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to the next one. This is the data we have got from the sensor. So if you look at it, you will see that we do have very good air quality. So that's really good. But that said, if you look at the average particulate matter, like 24-hour average, the air quality is very good. But every now and then we do get spikes if you look at the hourly particulate matter data. So that might be relevant for people who have respiratory conditions. So we're not completely saying that we don't have to monitor it, but overall it's good. And we do, it's according to the guidelines and set by NTPA. Just moving on to the next one, temperature monitoring. Again, this data is from the sensors that we have installed in two places. There is a temperature difference between the data that comes through the Bureau of Meteorology site and the ones installed, because the Bureau of Meteorology site is actually 10 kilometers away from the town center. So the town center is a little bit more warmer, and that's what we are seeing in this graph. So I might just stop there and let Lisa talk about the wearable sensor.
Thanks, Supriya, and thanks everybody for hanging out for this long in the day. And once again, thanks to the organisers, and especially to you, Pi, Linda, and Veronica, for the really essential cultural leadership that you've contributed to this day. So yes, I'm working alongside Supriya on this project, which, as you may have gathered, is multi-methodological. So it's a very ambitious project that's running for 2 years that involves citizen scientists' participation and the installation of these fixed sensors. And we're going to be correlating data collected from those sources, as well as conducting qualitative interviews with participants. So can I just ask for a second who in this room is from Alice Springs, Mantua? One person. Okay, sign up at the end of this event. The rest of you, we'd love you to sign up, but you don't live here. So if we just look at this slide, one of the low-cost technologies that we've been testing and we will be using in this project is a small clip-on device, which you can see a couple of people from the Alice Springs Waste Management Facility using during the pilot phase. I mean, you can see from the picture, but it's a device about this big. It's quite light, and as far as we know, it hasn't caused anybody any trouble when they've been using it. So that's going to be picking up the very close ambient temperatures around people in their working environments as one of the sort of data streams into this project. And we're going this way. Now, I've put this in. Does anyone have a guess what this might be, this image? Yeah, it is. I took that earlier this morning, and if you look over that side, you'll see that when the air conditioning was on, where the target is, at least that person was registering about 21.7 degrees on this infrared photography. I took one after the air conditioning was turned off, and so probably within, 40 minutes, the temperature had risen by about 1.5 degrees in here. So you can see the impact, as we all know, of air conditioning and comfort levels and everything else. That was taken on a very small clip-on infrared camera, which is now available for all kinds of phones. And that's another one of the methodologies we'll be using, where participant voluntary citizen scientists will be sort of photographing the hotspots in their experience of this town, and we'll be putting those together into some kind of community accessible output, which takes us into the whole question which was raised today, really important one about research translation and how we communicate both our research and the data that it's producing. And I'll just go back a bit on these things. At the end of April, I took a couple of images in the centre of town. So that's late autumn, and it was 4:30 in the afternoon, and that one's a walkway from a very hot car park in the centre of town to one of our main supermarkets, and this is sort of the back of the same car park. the radiant heat off the back of that building was 56.4 degrees, and the pavement temperature was 48.6 degrees. Now, these are very well-trafficked areas. They're places where people might be bundling kids in or out of cars, where old people are using walking frames, where people are sitting down who have other health conditions to take a breath and to stop. And they're sort of dangerously hot, even at the end of April. So when Supriya pointed out that we've already reached those climate projections for 2050, we've got reasons to be concerned about the way our urban environment is being managed, which opens a whole lot of other discussions for this town. One of the other methodologies we're using for a smaller, I should say we're aiming to have 100 participants in this study. 20 of those will be working very closely with Tangentyere Council Research Hub. That's a town camp resident population of Alice Springs. The other 80 will be drawn from wherever, but a subset of that 100, 10 to 15 people, may choose to ingest a small thermometer that you have in your body for about a day and a half. And that will give a very accurate reading of core body temperature. These are devices that are used in the building industry, the mining industry, elite sports, etc. And that's being supervised by a colleague of ours, Dr. Matt Brearley, who does a lot of work in remote and Northern Australia. The next one is, well, we saw aerator, so Taurus showed us something of that. Another sort of small clip-on technology is this thing called the Atmo Tube Pro. I'm not a salesperson for these things, but we've chosen these having looked at reviews of comparable devices. And what this does is give people, there's an app where you can sort of have a very accurate reading of your air quality conditions around you at a given time. But we're also feeding the air quality data from our fixed sensors, which you saw in some previous slides, into the Aerator app. So Alice Springs now has 2 locations. So if you go to aerator.org, you can download an app, and more places around the country will be populating that map. So if you're someone who does suffer respiratory conditions, you can check what the 2.5 and 10 particulate matter rate 10 size, which is a bit bigger, are like in your town. And the app allows you to look at the sort of trend over an hour, a day, a week, a month. So we're already directly feeding into that app. Sorry, so this is coming back to the Atmo Tube. So you can see there what the interface looks like. And this is going to allow the participant citizen climate scientists to get a really accurate sense of what air quality is like in their sort of daily life. So as I mentioned, one of the other methodologies is qualitative. So we'll be doing interviews and focus group discussions with people about thermal experience, about adaptation, and also about their experience of participating in a study as volunteer climate scientists. So there's these sort of 2 objectives of the study: to get the data, but also to create awareness about how people can use low-cost technologies and how they can contribute to a bigger picture in a town. When I was piloting the interview questions that we'd first sketched out for this, of course, new ideas came in from the sorts of things people were saying in response to the trial questions. And it became apparent that there really is, and this has been noted at other times today, a very big line in the sand between people who rent their homes and own their homes. And it was an oversight actually not to have thought of that more thoroughly in advance, but it came up very quickly that people's adaptation choices are delimited in very different ways depending on whether you're a homeowner or a renter. So we're going to be, those interviews take about an hour, so you can imagine there's quite a lot of data is going to be collected from those. And there'll be, ideally 100, maybe 50 long interviews with people about their thermal experiences in the desert. So yes, we are recruiting citizen scientists. It's not really relevant to you as an audience, but that's a process which is underway at the moment. And so the next 6 months, which are our hot months, will be the key data collection period for this study. And by the end of next year, there should be a whole host of data that's come out of this. That is just to show what we've been doing, some publications that are planned. And I will mention, though, that one of the really exciting parts of this project, from my perspective, is that Supriya had the inspiration and foresight to write into it some arts outcomes for community engagement. So we'll be working with a local youth arts group to play with some of these technologies, to play with some of the data, and to translate the outcomes of this project into forms that are, available for community engagement. That could involve a sort of participatory mapping exercise. The thermal photography is a lot of fun, and you get a very fast sort of feedback of the results of that. So we'll be holding some workshops and starting to develop those things. And I promised, or somebody did in the introduction, to say, explain an acronym that was used in the introduction. NTROs are things that are familiar to me as someone coming from the humanities and arts research background, and that's a non-traditional research output, and they're not so common in the sciences, but there's a lot of opportunity for art science collaboration, and for people to build in NTRO outcomes into their projects, which means something other than a published paper that is very valuable in its own terms, but it's not something that the wider community will always engage with. So NTROs are a thing. You can, if you're a university researcher, you can start to join discussions about those as well. Some disciplines are more familiar with them than others, but that's one of the things I'm bringing into this project. So with that, we've gone probably over time. You can contact us that way. If you take a shot of the QR code, you can get to our website, and you can spread the word if you have any friends or colleagues in Alice Springs who'd like to be voluntary citizen climate scientists. Thank you.